Welcome to T3Podecast, Transformation Through Truth. I am your host, Larry Lou, and this is a special edition. I guess I could say this is where the pain you feel today will be the strength that you carry tomorrow. Again, this is a special edition. I read something, and it really got me to thinking, and it really was put on my heart to try to explain this a little bit, because I think it'd be a good teaching situation. So what I'm referring to is, I was on X, and a story came up about a 16-year-old young man who was being convicted of first-degree murder and attempted murder. And he was going to be tried as an adult at 16 years old. I read the comments, and like all comment section, you're going to have people who just seem to be so brutal and heartless, and then you have people who are very sympathetic and feel sorry for this 16-year-old kid, and people wonder, well, what about the kid that he killed? Things like that. Now, for the record, I don't know the whole story. I don't know if this 16-year-old young man is innocent or guilty. I'm just going to talk about what it is that I saw, which was very, very little. But it caught my attention because when the judge said that there was not going to be any bail and he was going to have to sit in jail, I mean, he broke down, where the guards had to hold him up. He was crying. And it just got me to thinking. And so I wanted to try to take a stab at this situation, or I should say use this situation as a teaching tool, because I see it so much with our youth and young men who just seems to don't really get it. And seeing what I have seen and experiencing what I have experienced myself, I wanted to take a stab at it to give us all a little bit of clarity. In the comments, someone had said something about, terrible, mistake by this young man, and I hope he learns from it and things like that, which is cool. But somebody else, commented like, mistake? You mean like a mistake like getting on the wrong bus? Trying to equate the two. And I understand both sides. But let's talk about the mistake part. A mistake is very possible. And the only reason I say that is because when you talk about someone being in full knowledge of, you have three aspects. Now, in this particular case, if the young man knew the man that he killed and the actions that he took was supposed to be against this young man, okay, that's one aspect. He knew that. The second aspect is the instrument that is used, whether it be a gun or knife, a screwdriver or whatever. If he knew what this instrument was and this instrument's capabilities, that's aspect number two, which I assume he knew. And then the final aspect of being fully knowledgeable is the consequence or the result of this action in totality. Did he mean to just wound? Did he mean to kill? Did he mean to scare? These things I'm going to assume. And I don't know if he knew that or not. But what I do know is this. With that third aspect, it gets kind of tricky. Because consequences have become so abstract these days. And they're not properly carried out, or when they're not properly carried out. So consequences, seem to be not quite clear. And that is because they're not properly carried out nowadays. You think about the schools, and I see this day in and day out. I seen this day in and day out. A kid would get into a fight and not be suspended. Or a kid would get into a fight, he would get suspended, but he goes home and he gets to do whatever it is that he wants to do. He can still play the game. He's at the mall buying gold chains that his parents have given him to go do. All these type of things. And it's almost as if the fighting gets him a reward, because now if he doesn't get suspended in school, they're looking at him, praising him. The young girls like him. So there's a reward that comes with doing things that they shouldn't do. And I could probably say that about this culture, really, but we're going to keep it focused on, these young people. And it's not just the young men, it's the young women too. They can do something that they're not supposed to do, and the parents will not really punish them for it, or I should say, give them any kind of consequence. That's a problem. Not having consequences. My son, would be a great example. With his mother, he would get suspended. She might take the game one day, 2 days, only because I was trying to tell her what it is that she needed to do. And she would give in to 1 or 2 days. Cause my thing is he, if he's over here with me, he's not playing it at all until he gets his act together. And that might be 5-6 years down the line. It doesn't make a difference with me, but he has to get his act together first before he can regain these privileges, because there has to be taught that there are consequences behind actions. And that's not clear today. So if the parents don't give them any consequence, and I understand the parents, they probably at work. When you're a single parent, or even if you both parents, can't stay home, so you can't watch them. That might be for another podcast, but there are no consequences. And in school, even if the principals, the administration, wants to give a consequence, they get pushback. Because at the end of the day, if a kid isn't in school, there might not be any money coming in for that kid. So many suspensions and so many write-ups and things of that nature, their budget might get cut. because they're giving them this money to have these tools for these kids. And if that's not working, then what are we giving you the money for? What are you doing with the money? And then here's the kicker. A lot of these kids have IEPs. So now the kids with IEPs, which by the way are the ones that have the most issues, that are getting into the majority of the fights, they can't be suspended. They can't be suspended. So they fight. They don't get suspended. They don't get any consequence. So they can fight all day, every day, still stay in school, having the girls text him, oh, you look so sexy when you was beating him up. Oh, I seen the text. I see the text. And it's so these young men, the girls are liking them. There's a reward for doing things that shouldn't be done. So I'm not sure with this 16-year-old young man. I don't know what he been through previously. I don't know his history. Like I said, I just pulled it up and thought we could, discuss it and bring some light to this situation, because this is what's going on these days. Consequences are not being properly handed out. And the kids are suffering, because now when you go to a courtroom, been in plenty of those, the judge ain't trying to hear it. But the kids just they're not grasping it. It is abstract to them. And that's not their fault. So that's why I say that it is possibly a mistake, because that third aspect, if the kid doesn't really know the result, if he's always did whatever it is he wanted to do and not suffer the proper consequences, then naturally he feels he can get away with things. And on the flip side, the death penalty, people done research and the studies show that crime doesn't decrease just because there's the death penalty. So I'm not even saying that punishment and consequences all the time is the answer. I'm not even telling you I know what the answer is exactly. I believe it'd be different for each individual case, if you want my personal opinion. But for the sake of discussion, this is a general issue. So you got the parents, you got the schools, and then to add to all that, the music, the movies. The movies glorify it. We know that. The music glorifies it, and they be talking in the music about what they be doing, killing and this and that, and it seems as if they walk in the streets. So to these kids with their young minds, take that to be reality until they find out later, when it's too late, that it's nothing but entertainment for a lot of them. Some of them about that life, but the ones that I know end up in jail or dead. When you're really about that life, you don't have a whole bunch of options at the end of the day. It's not a whole lot of options at the end of the day when you're really about that life. So the parents, the school, the music, the movies, bombarding these kids with this stuff. And in their minds, they can get away with it, or it's not going to be as bad as everybody says. And that's very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. So the thought process that these young kids have is not by their own doing. I mean, even from infancy, all the way up to like 6 or 7, just think about it. We're not conscious about what is going on, about what is being put in us. We have no choice about what's being put in us. We're not sitting around saying, oh no, I don't want that kind of negativity in my life at 2, 3 years old. We have no concept of that. So everything that is being programmed into us is not by our doing, but we are being programmed. The subconscious is a program. So that's why I say that it's possibly it could be a mistake, because of those 3 aspects of full knowledge are not checked. Now let's get into choice, because a lot of people say, well, he made the choice. They made the choice. And I hear a lot of this too, and go back and forth with people when they talk about people cheating on their spouse, and the person to get caught and say, well, it was a mistake. And how you make a mistake having sex with somebody? And that is an excellent point. I agree. And I know for some people it's not. For some people not, but for some people it's not. But there is something I just want you to think about. I'm not saying you're wrong, but it is something I want you to think about. Just because somebody does something and has the knowledge of what it is that they're doing doesn't necessarily mean that it is a choice. Let me explain. Before you get the choice, you have voluntary and involuntary actions. So, of course, voluntary action is something that a person is fully aware of what it is that they are doing. They voluntarily do something. And there isn't anything external forcing them to do it. Okay? If I get up and walk out the door and go bust somebody's car window, nobody forced me to do that. Nobody's forcing me. Nobody's taking my hands, putting the baseball bat or brick and hitting the car window or throwing it at the car window and breaking it. No one is doing that. So from that aspect, it is a voluntary action because it is coming from inside of me. So it's voluntary. Involuntary, just straight involuntary action has to be something that where it was externally outside of yourself that caused you to do this. If I'm walking down the street with an umbrella and a gust of wind blows the umbrella out of my hand out of nowhere, and the umbrella hits somebody, that's an involuntary action on my part. I caused it, but it was involuntary. I had no control. I didn't know a gust of wind was coming and was going to take this umbrella out of my hand and it was going to hit someone. So that's involuntary. It's something that I wouldn't voluntarily do. Okay. So now that we kind of clear on that, I hope you're clear on that. Let's take it a little bit deeper. And I want to, if you remember the movie John Q with Denzel Washington. Denzel Washington had a son in the movie, and his son had a heart condition. The plot was his son had a heart condition, and Denzel ends up in the hospital because his son was going to die if he didn't have a heart transplant. So Denzel decides, well, I'm going to shoot myself, and you can just take my heart and put it into my son, because his son was on the waiting list, and who knows when that's gonna come. So he said, so if I shoot myself right here, you won't use my heart? You're just gonna waste a perfectly good heart? Doctor said, no, I'm gonna use it. So Denzel plans on killing himself so that his son can live. Very noble. Very noble. So let's take that situation. Let's go through the three aspects. In this situation, the person that he was perping on was himself. He was fully aware. The instrument that he was using, the gun, he knew what it can do. And he knew the result of his actions, what was going to take place. He knew the results, right? So he basically is checking off all three. So he's in full knowledge of. So this is a voluntary act that Denzel is about to partake in. Now, here's where it gets tricky. In most real life situations, a person's actions are a lot of times voluntary and involuntary. Because even though Denzel is fully in the knowledge of what it is that he's about to do to save his son, in and of itself, it is an involuntary action, because he wouldn't voluntarily do this. So in and of itself, it's involuntary, because that's not something he would normally or voluntarily do. But because of the situation and the emotion behind the situation, he's going to take his life. That 16-year-old young man, again, I don't know the whole situation, but there are thousands of young men like him. Get emotional. And anger drives the behavior. Get emotional, and anger drives the behavior. So although they can be in full knowledge of what it is they are doing, it is possible that it is this young man, this 16-year-old man, it was a involuntary act, because it's not something that he would voluntarily do, but because of the situation and the energy in movement, the energy in motion, the emotion of the anger, he performs this act. So in his case, whereas Denzel was committing a noble act, that's noble. He's saving his son. What parent wants to bury their child? Most parents believe that their child should bury them. So what Denzel was going to do was noble. Now, what this young man did, because he can't get off, that can't be an excuse. He committed an unjust act, therefore justice must be rendered. So to all you young men out there, understand that even though you get angry, even though you feel shame, if you commit an unjust act, justice has to be rendered, whether you want it or not. That needs to sink in, because this reality that you have is a delusion when it comes to the real world. There is something called preordained natural laws. Forget about the police and the laws that we have to govern. Forget about that for a minute. I'm talking about if that wasn't even a thing. Some people think that that would be a good thing. But if you kill my son, I'm going to have to kill you. If you take my daughter's life, if you sexually abuse my daughter, justice has to be rendered. Preordained natural laws. Now, this is what would happen if we didn't have this social order. It's there to try to help bring order, because everybody will be taking matters into their own hands. And you can say it would be chaos, maybe. But my point is this: preordained natural laws, it would do you a service. And I'm really talking to these young men out here. Again, I like that 18 to 25. Where you think you know everything and you don't. So it would do you some service to gain the knowledge of what it is that I'm saying, of these preordained natural laws. And not only the knowledge of, the other part of that, because just having the knowledge doesn't help you. So the knowledge of, not excluding compliance with these natural laws. For example, I'll give you an example right quick. Gravity is a natural law. I don't care if you black, white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever. If you go up to a 100-story building and jump off, gravity is going to do its job. That's a natural law. So with natural laws, what's also attached to those are natural consequences. Natural laws have natural consequences attached to them. And if you omit this knowledge of the laws, you have to pay a penalty. And again, these are ordained not by man. We have laws by man, but this is bigger than that. The laws by man are put in place for order. If you want to we can go spiritual for a minute. These are spiritual laws. You can't do things to harm people and get away with it. That's not justice. You commit an unjust act, justice has to be rendered. And this is what's happening, and y'all finding this out the hard way. Now, lastly, let me say this. You do something that you're not supposed to do. You commit this unjust act. You know who you committing it against. You know you're using this weapon. You know what it does. And you know what the result is going to be. I'm not saying that was a choice, because maybe you did it out of anger. Maybe you did it out of shame. Maybe you did. Maybe it wasn't cool for your girl to give this other guy her number. Years ago, they showed in this Coney Island, late at night, these two dudes are in there. This one guy comes in with his girl. They go up to the window, ordering or whatever. You can't hear the sound. They just showing you the video. The girl ordering, the guy's just looking at these two guys behind. So I don't know what these two guys said. But the next thing you see is this guy leaving his girl's side from the window, going up to these guys and shooting both of them. shooting both of them. Now, they might have said something about her body. They might have said something about him because of the way he looked. Maybe they feel like she shouldn't have been with him. I don't know. But he kills both of these guys. And so this is my point. Emotion. Not being able to regulate our emotions gets us to commit these voluntary / involuntary acts. And then when we get punished, well, I didn't mean for that to happen. I didn't necessarily want that. I didn't mean for this to happen, but it happened. But it happened. You committed an unjust act, although you may not be unjust yourself. But the act is unjust. And therefore demands justice. You may not be unjust. Because in order for the person to also be unjust, he would have the foresight, take emotion out of it, and you commit this act of murder, of brutality, without the emotion. That's what they call psychopaths. That's a choice. You're not being infringed upon by emotion, but you can't use emotion as an excuse. It just doesn't work that way. There are preordained natural laws. So to that young man, again, I don't know his whole story. I don't know whether he's innocent or guilty, but I thought that it would be good to discuss that situation because this is going on all across the United States. Committing these acts, and they may or may not be fully aware, but after the act is done, they want to apologize and be sorry. It's too late. Once you turn 18, and now even, again, as we finding out now, 16, maybe even 15. Years and years ago in Pontiac, Michigan, I think a kid was tried as an adult at 11 or 12 years old. But once you turn like 18, mommy and daddy can't help you. The teacher can't help you. The fact of the matter is you standing before a judge, you don't know what's about to happen. And you have to take account for that. That should be, that should be a variable that you think about when you are committing these acts. You don't know what this judge might do. Some judges may be lenient, some judges might not. This is the reality. If we just step back and try to look at the whole situation, it is messed up all the way around. But such is life. Pain is a part of life. Life is not fair. This is the reality. And we need to deal with the reality instead of the delusion. Subscribe, give me a like, and shoot a comment. I would love to know your thoughts about this situation. Larry Lou, T3 Podcast. Elevation is in order. Peace.